Okay, moving right along, we now have Mincor Resources. Mincor has two sustainable and high-grade nickel sulphide production centres in Kambalda, Western Australia. It's delivered its first ore to BHP's Nickel West concentrator, giving it maiden cash flow in June this year. Recent discoveries point to an extension in mine life beyond the existing 5 years, so looking forward to receiving an update. Please join me in welcoming David Southam, Managing Director of Mincor.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Diggers, and thank you, Andrew, for talking about the nickel market, which saves me a few slides. It's been a big week for Mincor with a lot of news flow. We actually did try and lobby Diggers and Dealers to change the name of this art centre to the Nickelfields Art Centre, but unfortunately a few precious goldies probably got a little bit upset, and they probably need to learn a little bit of resilience from us nickel miners. But we think Kambalda and Kalgoorlie has such a rich nickel history. Now, normally I would start today with a few All Black analogies, which I tend to weave into my presentations, but given recent form and feedback that I've had particularly from mining news, that I'm going to channel my new idol, Ash Barty, today. So please be patient if there's a few Ash Barty lines throughout the presentation. What I really wanted, though, to focus on today is what the team and I presented last year at Diggers. And it's really our report card. And when you're in control of the report card, unlike your children, it's self-serving, and you can assume that the report card is pretty good. But it's easy to talk when you're talking the truth. And Mincor made two key promises last year. First of all, we introduced the actual real Golden Mile, the Golden Mile of nickel. Don't forget about the Golden Mile of gold. Think about the Golden Mile of nickel. And we talked about the drilling possibilities. And there was some justifiable geological arm waving from this geological accountant. And then next, we also talked about, at Diggers this time, we would be in production. So what we didn't know is that the pandemic would continue to persist and we'd be operating in one of the most difficult environments with supply chain issues, labour issues, and certainly in my living memory. So it's actually with a great sense of pride in our workforce and our partners involved with our workforce that I can present you that both of these milestones have been achieved. First of all, if I can just touch upon production. During May, we announced first production and sales of nickel concentrate to BHP Nickel West. This was a momentous occasion for Kambalda, for the Shire of Coolgardie and its residents, for Mincor and its team, and also for BHP. It's the first time that the concentrator has been up and running since 2018. And I want to acknowledge now the team led by Jessica Farrell at BHP Nickel West, who have been exceptionally supportive of Mincor and have been nimble with us in being able to deliver this project. That resulted in first cash flow. And let me tell you, after being 2.5 years in development and only seeing checks go out, checks, I sound old, I sound like a boomer, don't I? But cash flow going out, it's nice to actually receive some money coming in for the first time. And what that enabled us to do is to deliver our project, which started in March 2020, which is when the pandemic hit, with pre-pandemic assumptions, that we delivered it under budget. And really, that's a shout out to the Mincor family. You know, we've been able to, and the team have been able to build, recruit, fund our project, and bring it into production. And there's a huge sense of pride with that. And I merely front the microphone to represent their achievements and also some of the achievements of the board with making some very early, brave decisions. And then secondly, the Golden Mile, which I'll touch upon in a little bit more detail. We actually named the Golden Mile after listening to the love story and Bill of Rowley a few diggers ago when they become bonded. However, they appear to be separated in today's world. But certainly we thought, well, we've got our own golden mile. And we believed we had the makings of a highly mineralised space with high-grade nickel that has never been explored. And guess what? This is what we did, and we did not embarrass ourselves. We always had a view that there was a connection underground at the Kambalda Dome, and we recently announced the discovery of a new ore body called LNO4A, not the most inventive name in the world, so let's call that the Golden Mile resource. And when you think about the team at Mincor, we're only a small team, and in a couple of years we've delivered 2 discoveries. We delivered Cassini, which won AMEC Prospector of the Year award in 2020, and now we've delivered this Golden Mile resource with limited resources. And if you multiply the 22,600 nickel tonnes by today's nickel price, and I'm probably going to get myself in trouble with the JORC police, but they'll have to fine me, 22,600 times 33,000 bucks a tonne, you're looking at $750 million of discovered nickel 90 metres away from brand new installed underground infrastructure. I also like to reflect on where we were last year with a few other facts. We now have 240 employees and contractors. We delivered our first sustainability report. And at Diggers last year, for that year, nickel was up $4,500 Aussie per tonne. It's now up another $9,000 per tonne to about 33,000 Aussie. We completed our feasibility at around 22. Last year, our share price was up 45% at this time, and this year it's up around 70% to $900 million, and I would argue still well under. EV growth continues, and I won't go into that, given that was covered well by the previous contractor. And another little fact, we are now 7 years without a lost time injury within our business. So, with the virtue of a few marriages or forced marriages between some nickel companies, we have now become the largest pure play nickel producer, sulphide nickel producer on the ASX. What it actually shows is nickel is very hard to come by, very hard to find, and we are one of the few investable companies in the globe at the moment for nickel sulphide. We did produce our first sustainability report, and we often talk about our employees acting as owners. Well, at Mincor, as at the 30th of June this year, the difference that we add to acting as owners is that every single employee of Mincor is an owner. And it's part of our retention scheme that enabled us in FY21 to have a 100% retention rate of our people. And we also have 33% gender diversity within our workforce, which I'll touch upon a little bit later. Just to remind you what our operations are, we have Cassini, which is the brand new mine, our discovery just south of Widgie-Miltha, the northern operations, which is the Long and Durkin deposits, and then I'll go on to talk about the Golden Mile. As I talked about earlier, we got our first revenue in, $25 million, sold 1,000 tonnes of nickel in concentrate. That was a 90% upfront payment from BHP. Our CFO camped herself within the BHP Nickel West office to ensure that the Kuala Lumpur payment department of BHP paid us on time, and they actually paid us early. That enabled us to deliver the project for $98 million of peak funding versus 107, which is our forecast. Again, another outstanding achievement by our team and by our partners. Just to give you a bit of a reminder about where we sit very close to infrastructure. Cassini down the south there, northern operations 70 kilometres up the north. I keep using the analogy because I am a little bit of a golfing tragic sometimes, that our northern operations are a driver and 6 iron away from the nickel concentrator. So we don't burn a lot of diesel, and it's very nice to have your customer next door to you. We're right beside the power line, right beside the water pipeline, right beside the main highway, and we're about to put in a new camp for our people at Cassini. Now, someone told me that there was a slide done by some company called Panna something, about the nickel Game of Thrones, and he was putting up some guy called Victor. I actually don't know who he is. I thought Victor was a lawnmower, but anyway, he's obviously got a few issues because the King of the North was a bit of an illegitimate child. So in the spirit of ESG, we are always happy for, is it Victor? Victor, to utilise our employee assistance program. So come and see us, Victor. But it's been a really interesting time for nickel. You know, we sit right in the middle. We're like the United Nations of nickel, is how I like to define Mincor. You know, we've had our largest shareholder, Wyloo Metals, have a bit of a stoush with BHP for Naront, which is a nickel asset in Canada. So we had our number one shareholder having some robust discussions with our customer. Then you can see the wedding bells there for IGO in Western Areas, and geez, wasn't that a long engagement that we all read about every day? And that ultimately happened, but at some stage, if you believe the press, and the press always do tell the truth, that Wyloo was going to block IGO from buying Western Areas, which meant that our number one shareholder was having a fight with our number two shareholder and taking product away from our major customer. So it puts us in a very interesting position, but a very strong strategic position. We have two fantastic shareholders in IGO and Wyloo who have been nothing but supportive of us, and a customer in BHP have been nothing but supportive to us. Our nickel concentrate, though, is of high quality. It works well within the smelter. It has a high value in use. It is the type of concentrate which is perfect for blending with BHP's nickel. So we think we're in a pretty good space, and at the end of the day, and I've used these corny dad joke terms before, but it's Kambalda to Kia, it's Mincor to Mercedes. Our product ultimately ends up in electric vehicle batteries. So at Cassini, and I want to shout out a couple of people here, Tom Patton, who started with us before we actually kicked off Cassini as our General Manager of Operations, and Cassandra, who is Alternate Underground Manager. They've built this mine from scratch in a couple of years, and we're now actually mining ore, which is fantastic. We will be drilling here. We stopped drilling a number of years ago because we had enough nickel tonnes to get started, and if we hadn't have made that decision and we're still drilling, we'd be building in this environment, which would be, let's just say, challenging. And where we'll be drilling is, and we're getting into a little bit of geology here, out to the left on my screen is this, you can see CS1 or Cassini North. There's more nickel to be found there. We've had high-grade hits. And we'll also plug in a few gaps, and we're already seeing with some of our ore that we're mining in development that it connects when we had a fault zone. So we're actually mining a little bit of ore outside of resource and reserve. We're swinging right past it, so we should take it. Cassini, to win AMEC Prospector of the Year, and judged by your geological peers, it's going to have a far greater life than 5 years. If it's less than 15 years, there's a problem. So the Northern Operations, and here I want to acknowledge Ron Ellis and his team, who again, you know, we sometimes refer to this internally as the battleship, because Long has older infrastructure than Cassini. They've turned around older infrastructure, refurbished it, built an incline 1.2 kilometres connecting the Long ore body to Durkin North, so miners mining upwards rather than down, which is different. We've put in ventilation, and we've now started mining ore. We had our first stope at Durkin North recently. If you want to see what high grade looks like, come across our booth. We've got some 15% ore there, which won't stay for long. It'll go to BHP, but come and have a feel if you'd like. But our concept here was that when we purchased Long off IGO, we felt consolidating this dome for the first time since WMC, that these ore bodies would connect from underground. And so when we were going through development, and I have to commend here WebDrill, who have operated from 1,000 metres underground, drilling upwards in all different directions, working with Pit and Portal, who are focused on getting the development in place and getting ore driving happening. They've all worked exceptionally well. And it was just so pleasing for the team to be able to come out with our first phase one, and I say phase one, nickel resource. And most of that's an indicated 22,600 nickel tonnes. Unlike most geological slides I've seen, I've never seen a photo of an ore body where it's not open in every possible direction that it could ever possibly point to. We're pointing in specific directions. And you can see already outside of the inferred shape, we've already had nickel intersections. So this will get bigger. It's only 90 metres away from our infrastructure, and we are starting to see the connection between the Long complex and the Durkin complex, and possibly all the way through to the Otter complex. Truly exciting stuff. We also are back in the community, and this was a really cool day where we had the Year 11 and 12 Curtin STEM students out at site. And the image, the larger image that you can see there of the Woodall decline, we're tremendously proud to name that after Dr. Roy Woodall. But what was even really cool was Roy Woodall's granddaughter, Kate Woodall, was leading this group, and she's on the right there. And the first thing she did was take a photo of herself, or a selfie of herself, and, well, that's pretty obvious, selfie of yourself, a selfie with the Woodall decline in the background, and sent that straight to Barbara, her grandmother. So that's a really cool thing that we're doing. In terms of news flow, we are working on an ore reserve right now for the Golden Mile resource. We'll come out with our first guidance in the September quarterly report. And I should probably touch upon leadership transition. That was announced earlier this week, and thank you for all the feedback that I've had over the last few days from some people at Diggers. So I want to quickly touch upon this. When I joined the board, Mincor, 3.5 years ago, we had a vision that if things went well, we might get into production in 5 years. At that point, we had a closing down gold project, a few good nickel hits, less than $10 million in the bank, but we had a very small, dedicated team, great DNA, and amazing ground. So despite all the surprises, the headwinds, the roadblocks that began to unfold in March 2020, I think it's fair to say we've achieved a lot more than what we expected in the first 3 years in coming into production. And that's entirely due to the team at Mincor, from the chair down to the executives, to the general managers, our technical teams, our finance team. You couldn't wish for a harder working workforce. And I always like to make the point, I didn't discover Cassini. I didn't discover the Golden Mile. I didn't build this project. It was the Mincor team who did this. I just merely front as a bugle at the front to trumpet their success. And I am a firm believer in the concept that companies are enriched by new ideas, new energy, and new leadership when the time is right. And with our recent transition back into the ranks of Australian nickel producers now complete, now is the right time to pass the baton to someone with a very strong technical and operational background. So my job at Mincor and my journey is done, although I will be remaining consulting to the company, but I couldn't be more prouder to be passing on the baton to an exceptional and talented and accomplished individual. So Gabrielle Iwano is an Australian mining leader. Her performance and skills gained at the upper levels of some of the world's largest mining companies in Rio Tinto, but also with her success in turning around Oz Minerals, Prominent Hill Mine, speak for itself. Gabrielle was an exceptional and a clear standout during our search. So after 25 years of frontline executive duties, I'm going to take some time off to spend with my wife, which I'm not sure she's looking forward to, and to my two sons, one of them who's here at Diggers, and I think got in a little bit early this morning, and also spend some time with my other son in Sydney and all my family in New Zealand. I'd like to sincerely thank Diggers and Dealers for giving me this opportunity to present here, and to the many people from within Mincor and broadly across my career who have helped me, guided me, and supported me. I look forward to returning in some capacity in the future so you can listen to my boomer jokes, but also to continue those relationships that I've developed. And on a final note, assuming that diggers and dealers are kind enough to consider Mincor again for a presentation next year when our market capitalisation has doubled again, I'll get in trouble for saying that, I should note that the forum will be losing some diversity. You will be losing one of the few New Zealand presenters, but you will be gaining one of the most impressive mining executives. At Mincor, we are an ethnically and gender diverse company. And a little factoid, with Gabrielle coming on as our new CEO, I think that we will be the only ASX resource company with a female CEO and a female CFO. So I think that's something to be excited about. I'm looking forward to Gabrielle starting, but for now, my time is up and I bid you farewell.
We do have time for questions. Is there anything from the floor? Okay. Normally when I'm hosting it... Sorry.
Thank you. It would be remiss, so James Trail, Shire of Coolgardie. David, thank you for that. I'd just like to make or perhaps ask a question, make an observation, things. Certainly in a small community like Cambourne and the Shire of Coolgardie, and there was a question, we had our guest speaker, our opening speaker on Monday talk about ESG. Mincor is an absolute example of what a company can do when they work with a community. Okay, so David, thank you for what you've done for our town and your team. For Mincor, you've reignited Cambourne and revisited and made it a really exciting place and things. So be very proud of what you've done and your team, and personally thank you and stuff. So not a question, but it would be remiss without doing that, because it demonstrates what happens when a company with your values and what portrays works closely with the local community to deliver outcomes and things, and we're extremely excited around what's going on, and it's activating lots of things in our community. So thank you on behalf of the Shire of Coolgardie.
That's great.
Can I just say that James is my stepdad as well?
Great presentation. Thanks very much, David Southern.
Thank you. Cheers.
Well done, mate. Lovely.